It all started with a monster, Frankenstein to be precise. Even Dracula had to wait in the wings to take his place on stage. In 1957, Hammer Studios released The Curse of Frankenstein. It became Hammer's first true smash hit. Gothic horror was in. Before the end of the year, The Horrors of Dracula was in production. James Carreras, head of Hammer Studios, took a poster for a still non-existent Frankenstein movie to America. He met with Columbia Pictures and secured their cooperation for the next Frankenstein film. When he returned home, he told screenwriter Jimmy Sangster that he had 6 weeks to write a script. The writer pointed out that Frankenstein was killed off in the last film, but Carreras replied that Sangster would think of something. He did, and so filming for The Revenge of Frankenstein started 3 days after The Horrors of Dracula wrapped.
Baron Frankenstein escapes the guillotine with the help of his hunchbacked assistant Karl and assumes the name Dr. Stein. He moves to Karlsruhe, Germany, establishes himself as a respected physician. Frankenstein practices medicine in a hospital for the poor while he secretly continues to experiment with reanimation and body transplants. When young Dr. Hans Kleve uncovers the Baron's true identity, he insists on becoming his assistant, drawn to the knowledge that comes from Frankenstein's forbidden research. Dr. Frankenstein transplants Karl's brain into a new, physically perfect body, and the procedure seems successful. Karl's mind slowly deteriorates, however, and leads to violent and tragic consequences. Frankenstein's identity is exposed, and his reputation and life are once again threatened, causing him to make himself the subject of another dark and dangerous experiment.
Tonight we're going to go ahead and discuss Revenge of Frankenstein. Revenge of Frankenstein is the second movie in the Hammer franchise. It stars, again, Peter Cushing, as we already know that Peter Cushing is Frankenstein. It's interesting because if you remember the first Frankenstein movie, Frankenstein was guillotined, or so they led you to believe. According to the production notes I saw on this, after they sold the idea about Dracula, James Carreras, big shot at Hammer, also sold or pre-sold an idea about the Revenge of Frankenstein. He came back after being successful and talked to Jimmy Sangster and said, "Hey, I need you to do another script for Frankenstein." He said, "What are you going to want me to do? We killed him off in the first one." And then he just said, "Hey, you'll think of something." So 3 months before the film came out, Sangster started on the script. He came up with a actual workable premise for how he was going to have Frankenstein come back in this movie. But this, to me, as far as I'm concerned, this movie is every bit as good as the first one. Maybe even better in some ways. The acting, the cinematography, the character development. Frankenstein's not near as wicked, although he's a bit of a psychopath at times. But this is an excellent movie and it's well worth watching.
I want to watch this again for spiritual overtones and context, because another foreshadowing, but it does it on multiple levels. You hear the blade come down, and then you hear what you think is a scream, and suddenly it cuts to a squeal in a bar. To me, that does a couple of different things. One, it shows you that the guillotine was a subversion, but then I also see in this film, more so than in the first Frankenstein, this interesting interplay between spiritual worlds or worlds, because it's like,
well, he kills the priest.
Well, he kills the priest. Suddenly, we cut to this working class bar, a very low class working class bar, we assume, because of the two gentlemen we see later, talking. But it also goes back and forth throughout the whole film between, like, we've got this physical world Then we've got this, whether you want to look at it as purgatory or even like, first level of hell or something, where you have a guy trying to be God, Frankenstein. And there's this whole thing running through that, which is like, what is, human pride creates false spirituality.
But I also want to put something else along that spiritual line. They made it a point several times in the film to tell you that when they find the priest's body in there, the head is gone. They didn't bury the head with it, which means Frankenstein has it, by the way, which I think is the head he used on his second body. So kind of like him trying to usurp God's position.
Intriguing.
And therefore leaves you down to hell.
Well, plus it also makes you think, spoiler, the future, where they go into the lab, Frankenstein tells his protege, hey, look, I created a brain of sorts. And then they go through that demo with the eyes and the hand. And now it makes me wonder what happened to the priest's brain.
That's a good question, but I just think he used his head in that body. And that is an excellent question, because maybe it wasn't an orangutan he put in that chimp. Maybe it was the priest.
Huh. That, of course, is assuming facts.
Right. The only thing we know is they made a point that the priest's head was gone.
Speculation. Nothing's been established. That's all pure speculation.
That's true. But they did make a point to let you know the head was missing from the priest.
Yes.
And he did come up with the other body. Because I always assumed, by the way, that the body he used for his creature, the first body they show, was probably the guy he was supposed to be the executioner that day. They look quite a lot alike.
Well, here's something else I want to throw out as a thought I had too, and this is why I want to rewatch the film, and we can talk about it later. But to me, there's an implication early on that maybe he was planning that bodily replacement for himself.
Oh yeah, I think that was an obvious. He knew it was going to be coming, because he even said, I had a contingency.
Plus the line where he says, they're never going to get rid of me.
He's found his way to eternal life, and this is his way to do it.
After he escapes, he goes to another city. I think it's Carlsberg. Is this where he goes? Is Carlsberg where he's at now?
Yes.
They have a pretty good beer. Anyway.
Yes, I did.
He goes by Dr. Stein.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, as in Bierstein, I guess. I don't know. But anyway, sets up a practice there, becomes extremely successful, and he spends a lot of time among the poor, and they're the ones that he's taking advantage of, we find out. But the medical council of the city, they are very suspicious because he will not join the council. The council comes, and he just completely brushes them off.
But I think this also kind of feeds into what we talked about earlier. There's almost like a cult, or there's an undercurrent of people who know about Frankenstein, and some of them are accepting of what he did, or the possibilities of what he did.
He eventually, once he's told that he's the greatest medical mind in the world, boom, hey, guess what? That's me. He just can't help to take his bows. And I thought it was interesting. Another one of those directorial or screenwriting things to me. The guy sneaks in and waits for him in the dark, and that is almost like a little morality thing where it's Dr. Frankenstein lets these little gremlins sneak in his own mind. Because if he was coldly rational and really honestly just wanted to, find out the secret of life and recreate it without any sort of projections of self-divinity, things might have gone much different.
That's his human weakness. He may want to be God, but he can't.
And you could also look at that room as being the back parts of his mind. This is how I kind of looked at it, is with the guy hiding in the darkness waiting for him is like his own ego or his own need, it's still there.
His id creeping in.
He's hiding it in the darkness, and then it comes to light. I mean, it's always been there, but it comes to light now that he's got another tool, another set of hands, another guy that's going to stroke his ego. The guy kisses his ass. Frankenstein reveals everything. Show this guy, how super godlike he is.
This is something I am proud of.
Getting better at it. And that, by the way, the monster there was Michael Gwynn. He was also in The Scars of Dracula as the scared priest who was...
As the priest, yes.
Yes.
Weekly.
He also did Cleopatra, Jason and the Argonauts. It was also in the fall of the Roman Empire, so he's done some real movies besides these things. I thought there's not much really you can say about that scene that doesn't say for itself, but I do like you included it because it was, for 58, it was actually some decent effects.
Now, wasn't it shortly after that they were discussing the chimpanzee, and they had discussed that the chimpanzee was the first recipient of a brain transplant, and then shortly after
he ate his mate.
But for some reason, it didn't seem to really bother them or to really register that it was a problem.
Well, he said that there was some kind of brain damage that caused the situation, and that he had done some kind of pre-operational whatever to ensure that it wouldn't happen to the human guy. He didn't realize that he was going to wind up getting his brain busted up by the janitor. That's when he went off the deep end and started like on homicidal.
Yeah.
Are we allowed to say postal anymore? Went postal.
Sure, why not?
I thought
Go ahead. It's so 1990s, but we'll take it.
Let me say a few other things. It's just that one, again, this could have been a practical consideration. It might be artistic. But if you think about the fact that how, like, towards the end of The Curse of Frankenstein, when Frankenstein retrieved the monster's body and he had it hanging like he did, which I thought was an amazing shot. I thought this was echoing it, but now the body or the creature, however you want to look at this, is now in a much more controlled environment. I mean, like
right.
It's in, I guess it...
confessed to being proud of it.
Yeah, and that it's much more civil looking, but it's also being preserved.
And aesthetically pleasing. Carl killed a priest just to get the new body, too. That's something we have to remember.
He was motivated.
Well, you assume he did it. He might have just knocked the priest in there in it.
Any way you look at it, he did.
He was there.
He helped in order to get a new body.
Yes.
And you know that body he's getting put into was probably part of the executioner's body. Because they never did find that guy's body, did they?
Well, they never really discussed it.
Never addressed it.
When they were looking at each other, they looked like they were in on it together.
Now, this is why I put this scene in there. You see this here?
Yeah.
That scene right there, we're dropping the brain in. The British censors found it too grotesque.
Graphic?
Yeah, too graphic. They said that was too much, and he demanded that it could clip from the film.
Now, could imagine the film without it now?
Yeah, and I put that scene in there because, like I said, the brain drop always amazes me that the censors wanted the brains taken out of the film.
Well, I don't know how it is. I don't
imagine.
Yeah, I don't know how it works in Britain, but it's like here in the United States with the MPAA. They bring in a bunch of people, they show it to them. It's not like a regular bunch of members, but it's like they invite them in, they show them, and it's like, what kind of rating would you give this? And I don't know if the British do that.
I don't know either, but I do know that Hammer had a lot of trouble with British censors because they always complained that the color was too graphic, the blood was too graphic, and I think that's
Christopher
why...
Lee was too graphic.
And apparently by the early 70s, nobody gave a shit anymore, and they just started showing all the boobs.
Absolutely. Once that door got up, and I'm thinking how far they would have gone had they gone after that. Now, the next scene that I chose to show is the scene where the girl...
Eunice Grayson.
Yes, well, the thing is, in here, Margaret, she's actually there because her daddy's like a pastor, and he wants her there to help the poor. And she gets told by the guy in the broom earlier that, oh, no, he's not so nice. They got a guy in the back who keeps screaming all the time, so she has to go back there to check him out because she's worried about it.
I was just gonna say, I think the helper or the caregiver, whatever the guy that was working, he seemed to be a little bit more insidious, or you know,
totally.
He knew he was getting ready to do something wrong. He knew it was going to lead to something wrong.
Right, but he didn't care because as long as he gets paid to do nothing, which every time you see him, he's always talking and holding the broom. The other doctor makes a point of it. You wouldn't be so cold if you actually would use that broom for something else, like sweeping. It's like he likes to cause the trouble. He enjoys watching these guys get cut up. He enjoys this antic he sets up because he's the one who steals the keys and says, I'll open the door, go talk to the guy. So she thinks she's doing God's work by going in and talking to him, and the guy recognizes him, but of course she doesn't because the bodies have already been switched. And something else on Eunice Grayson, she became the first Bond girl. She was actually hired to play Moneypenny, but the girl who was hired to play her role, Sylvia, didn't like it because she thought it was rather immodest, so she kind of threw a fit, so they flipped them. And that's also why they had her, I think, her daughter, or was her granddaughter, actually at the casino in the later ones, in the modern ones. So, the reason I also showed that last one was because you saw that his body was fully functioning. It was working the
Yeah.
way it was supposed to. He had no problem getting dressed. His leg was working. His arm was working to show you when he starts transitioning later on. In other words, it was a success. I know I'm kind of sad, but of course, the next part of the film is what happens to poor Carl because, it can't go right.
The one thing I wanted to bring up is the brutality of the Watchmen. They didn't show anything at all about him. They
Just
only showed him
him
like in
just being-
passing, and
yes.
then you find out that
Just-
when it comes down to it, he's a brutal asshole.
Well, if you think
Underground,
about it, too,
dungeony.
everybody
Yeah.
they show in here, except for Eunice Grayson, does everything for their own selfish reasons. The doctors are assholes because they want to keep control over the medical views. That's why they're trying to force Frankenstein there. The Watchman here, after Carl
He was out
gets
getting
out,
alcohol.
gets
right?
out, he goes to the lab because that's what he knows. And the Watchman, for no real reason, says, "Hey, I'm going to beat you up. Just don't hit me in the head." Oh, you don't get hit in the head, so he does it intentionally just because he thinks he can. So he's an asshole. The guy with the broom's an asshole. Even the Countess they showed here is an asshole because she comes to Frankenstein because she's trying to get Frankenstein, the famous rich doctor, to marry her daughter. So everybody here has their own motives, their own selfish, disgusting motives.
Yeah,
And
very self-serving.
I don't know if there's a decent person in this thing, but Eunice Grayson.
But okay, this is all the backdrop though, because Carl's escaped. Frankenstein and are trying to find him. And they're
Right. So they
they're
go
kinda riding
to.
around.
Oh no,
I
go
was
ahead.
just gonna say they get pulled over by the cops, so the cops have him come over and inspect the body of the girl that was just murdered by the creature. So now they're still wondering, and they still thinking about where else he could go.
And they know he has something for her, so they go to Eunice Grayson. But like I say now, Frankenstein's been exposed as Frankenstein. And I'm sorry, I can't help honestly think that Mel Brooks and Gene Wilder had watched this film a couple of times because I'm sorry, the sedative, that one scene to me was the whole sedative thing.
Right, yeah.
Since he's been exposed as Frankenstein, all the men obviously who've been cut up in the hospital aren't too happy. And I can't help but think that Frankenstein was ready for this because he already had the body ready, already had a student ready, and a guy he knew could actually handle the operation.
And he's back in business.
Yes, and slimier than ever.
Will you please get me something to